IT, whatever, are you gonna talk to me? Do you wanna take my call?
I do, and we are talking, and this has come up in this conference. It's been something that's come up, and coming from some brands that have a bigger footprint, you know, we have a little bit have the luxury of people coming to us a lot, and we quite often didn't have an opportunity in the markets they wanted. At Potbelly, the store execution is probably one of the simplest store execution models that I've been a part of, and we have a ton of open space. And right now, we're looking, you know, I think in this climate, there are multi-unit, multi-concept operators out there looking for, you know, the next thing that they can do that they're not gonna bump up against another franchisee in their market. However, I spend, you know, 75% of my time talking to somebody who's leaving their, you know.
What's that conversation like?
The corporate world. So it's about training. And so on Monday, I'm gonna visit our Annapolis stores with two fellows that I've been working with that are coming out of banking and technology. And it really is, you know, from where I sit, my job to make sure that I'm putting them in the right spot. I really feel a responsibility that I want them to come and visit. I want them to understand when we say sideways service, that it's not just you know, like what does that mean?
Sideways,
yeah, I mean, it sounds kind of wonky. It sounds so corny. But I want them to meet our employees, get a feel for this is what you're gonna be doing. Because before you put somebody, you know, before we have that 10-year, you know, marriage that we talked about when we had the FDD conversation, you wanna make sure that they're gonna be safe, that they're gonna be reasonably confident that they can execute. But I think people bring a lot of experience, and we need to supply the know-how, and we also need to supply the tools. I've had another great conversation with someone here with the Franchise Institute, where you need to continue to educate the franchisees with other tools so that they can enrich their organizations through further training that even the brand might not supply.
So Sean, you're having one of those conversations. You probably have, I don't know, thousands like that. What are the flags that say, wow, this is someone I want to convince that we gotta work with? And what are the flags that you say, whew, man, I don't know.
Well, yeah, and first of all, from a franchise recruitment perspective, I think maybe you guys can agree, is the no's have been more important to us than the yeses. Sometimes you gotta protect people from themselves, quite honestly, and put them, as Maureen said, in a position to succeed. And this goes back, even back in my Hallmark days. I had people come in, you know, I send 300 greeting cards a year, therefore I would be a great Hallmark retailer. Not necessarily. Or you mentioned about, you know, coming out of corporate America, 9 to 5. That's great, but you're working with, in most cases, highly educated, highly motivated, highly compensated employees every day. And now I'm gonna give you a 16-year-old who's their first job, and they really don't care. So, I mean, they'll bring you to your knees. And like I said, the no's for us, it's very important as a franchisor, because I will tell you, it's harder to get a person out of the system than it is to get into the system. And they can do a lot of damage if it's the wrong person. They can do a lot of damage to the brand. So, so you always have that guardrail, if you will. At the same time, to your point, I can name on this hand 5 groups that I missed out on. I thought they were, you know, fantastic, and they didn't, you know, join the brand that I was representing at the time, and I was disappointed about that. And at the same time, on this hand, I have 5 others that I brought into the brand, and I wish I would have seen the red flags before it. So, yeah, like I said, over the years we've had these conversations time and time again. And like I said, you just have to, sometimes you have to just protect people from themselves. Don't let them get over their skis, if you will, undercapitalized or just not that passionate.
Yeah, but you agree, Pamela? I mean, is that what you've seen in some of those conversations? And are there specific items or characteristics that you and I say this not to call out people, but also to give clues to folks to say, look, this afternoon they may come up to you, and there'll be things that you'll be looking for to kind of give you some sense of what have they thought through this. So talk about that.
Yeah, I will say that I have the honest conversation with them, you know, just as they ask me questions. People have come up to me and asked the question, like, what do you look for in a franchisee? You know, here's, you know, and I tell them, and they're like, well, I don't have those finances, you know, financials, but I do have a background, you know. I don't have that much net worth or liquidity, but, you know, so it goes a little both ways. You know, you may have something, but you don't have enough, you know, pieces of it all. So it's really just, okay, great, you have this, let's talk more, and then building them to where, as Sean said, that they're succeeding and that they're getting the truth honest about what they really need to do to really be able to become a franchisee. So that's kind of the key factors, to make sure you're transparent with them as they're being transparent with you. Because most won't be, and then you find out when it's time to show your financials and all of that, and you're like, well, we talked about this, so.
Mm-hmm. It's showing financials, so let's talk about the numbers, because you mentioned business plans, marketing plans. Yeah, if I've come from corporate America, I may have done a P&L or run a P&L for my division, but I haven't built it from the ground zero. Some VP gave me the numbers and I have to manage them. Either I make them, I don't, or I get fired. Yeah, Maureen, we'll talk, where do I need to begin? You mentioned a lot of support, but there's gotta be something I have to know, I've gotta learn if I wanna do this to be successful. What is that? What are the numbers you're looking for? How do I make sure I present those in the proper format that makes you kind of think, oh, well, you know, Neil kind of knows what he's doing. We can work with that.
Yeah, we and this is in multiple concepts that I've represented. I have a template for a business plan that I give folks, and because it's hard to gather your thoughts, right? We're in this dance of, I want to be in your organization. I'd like you to be. If we're getting this far down the road, I want you to put your best foot forward, because I'm not the last word, you know, on the deal. But then I also have a sample pro forma that I give folks, because not everybody, I mean, you know, if somebody said to me, Maureen created an Excel pro forma that looks out 10 years and you're building 5 stores and you're borrowing money, and you know, I would say I'm making this too hard. I mean, it's hard enough once you get in, you know, so, but let's be reasonable so that we're all looking at the same thing. So I like all of my prospective candidates to have, here's a business plan. I don't need you to give me back all the information about the brand, because we know that. That's from our website. I want to know who's going to run it, who's going to pay for it, what's your plan if something happens, you know, how do you see yourself, you know, and that sort of captures some flags that, you know, people that might think rent is still hovering at 4%, or, you know, or they could maybe get our food costs down below what's in the FDD, like by a significant amount. And those are things that those create the conversation, you know, if we could get it there, we'd all be millionaires. But I try to make it easy, because I want them to be thinking about what they're going to present to us, not trying to what's going to make me happy. Like, what am I going to like? So, you know, I have sort of a plan. And to, you know, Pam and Sean, so many people go into it. They're great customers. I look at everybody, you know. I send 300 Hallmark cards a year. If that wasn't, you know, if they didn't fit the bill, I would send them a gift card to our store, because you want them to always be like, wow, even getting that no was like, it was okay. Like, I like that company. So, yeah.
Right, Ricky?
I love that, right? Because that's a sense of like, well, good customer or run a business. Well, hey, like we said, I love smoothies. But does that make me an operator? Which you get to, and I've taught entrepreneurship, and I've tried to walk through folks who've never seen a spreadsheet before who love a spreadsheet by the end of it. Do the numbers make sense at the end? Well, no, we could all take a spreadsheet today and show great profitability, right? So what's that check and balance that you would encourage folks to do, even if they're kind of just thinking about it? Because there's certainly plenty of financials that they could pull from existing models here. What should I be looking for if I'm beginning to just put my numbers together? Is there a certain amount I should have in my bank account? Is there a certain amount I should think about getting from a bank? What are the other tools or resources that you're gonna provide, and where I need to do my sweat equity to figure out?
Well, yeah, and any responsible franchisor is gonna have minimum thresholds, right? Minimum liquidity. I'll be honest, we raised ours last year, beginning of '23. It was 100,000 liquid and 300,000 net worth per unit to be developed, and we had an honest conversation. It was actually restaurant finance in '22. Had an honest conversation with our lenders. They were starting to see some of the economic things that we're seeing today, and they said, hey, we need to, we're gonna be asking for more injection on the projects going forward. They're asking a lot of questions today, so we bumped our minimums up to 150 and 350, 150,000 liquid, 350 net
Was
worth.
that just for getting better quality of people in?
100%, because you don't want to be undercapitalized in any business, franchise or otherwise. It's a recipe for disaster. So again, we had the honest conversation with the lender. We had an honest conversation with ourselves as well, because obviously a lower threshold is more fish, in the sea at those lower thresholds. But so we just wanted people to be in a good spot. I will tell you from spreadsheets and pro formas, and we all have templates to use. I will tell you, for all the years I've been doing this, it always looks good on paper.
Yes.
It always works on paper. And then life happens and stuff happens, right? So you want to, if you're doing a pro forma, it should be best case, worst case, most likely case. And can you live with all three of those cases? Because all three of them may likely play out. So that's important as well.
So in best case, good case, worst case, and cut that in half. Right?
Yeah, and cut that and divide by 2. That's right. Because you want to be pleasantly surprised that the best case came to fruition than the other way around. As Maureen said, if you think, and that's where, and Tarji stole my thunder. Again, 30 minutes with a franchisee more valuable than 30 days with me. Because they live it every day, they understand it, and that goes, there was a great presentation about the FTD earlier. Again, those documents are written, it was told to me by a franchise attorney many years ago. It's a document that is one-sided towards the franchisor, but it's to protect great brands or good brands from bad people. How does the franchisor execute that document is important, and your franchisees that are living it every day will tell you.
And Pam, you talked about those tough conversations. I mean, are there conversations, the examples of folks that you've talked to and said, hey, there's something there, but here's what you need to work on? Or what are some of those things you tell them?
Yeah, I think it's really, just, that's part of when they're building out their business plan, right?
Yeah.
So they have to, tell that story and that's what brings them to us, and we figure, oh, you're a good match, or we're having that conversation to, make sure they're situated to be approved, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they have to go through a trajectory of other people in order to be able to showcase that they're the right person. So as salespeople, we want to make sure that we're producing them and they're showcasing themselves. It's like a job interview. Look, let me make sure you're doing this, and did you do that? And make sure they're in the right sense. And obviously, it's really, did they do their due diligence, right? Mm-hmm. And the franchisees have talked about it. It's like, did you visit a store? Did you work in a store? Those are really, really great examples of you're passionate about what you really want to do. So having those conversations, and it's really like a coaching thing with them. So I think, having that relationship with them, being transparent, really helps to produce, the right candidate.
That's great. And Maureen, you mentioned you're doing some traveling to meet with some folks. Is that something you rarely do? And that coaching aspect, which I think is something you're saying here, because there's the nuts and bolts but you gotta bring me along to be successful. What is that is that tough love coaching? Is that, hey, here, no, you gotta put on the gloves and you're gonna make some sandwiches today? I mean, what is that kind of love?
I mean, I think that kind of passion where people wanna get behind the scenes, you can really see, and if they wanna talk to the crew when they're in there, and that's the kind of stuff that you're like, this person will be comfortable here. And it's, I hope it's not, sometimes it might be tough love. I hope we don't get that far down the road that we're having that kind of conversations, that I've wasted their time. But, like, Pam said, we're directing the deal really like a coach.
Yeah.
We want our people to put their best foot forward. We wanna get in that meeting with them and be like, oh, look who we've got here. And everybody's so impressed. We don't ever want to set somebody up to say like, yeah, I didn't see it either. It's like, what? Like, what are you talking about? You brought everybody, along, so you want to make sure that, as you're guiding them along, that they're getting prepped for this.
And so let's kind of take it to the next level, Pam. So what's that next step? You get someone in, they have one unit. What's the tipping point to become that multi-unit franchise? I mean, yeah, we talked about it earlier, folks who were like, oh, hey, here's 20 franchises. It's like, why? Yeah, I don't even know, I got to do one. So what's that tipping point, or what are the factors that I need to consider, particularly with folks out here who think, well, I want more than one, I want more than two. What do I need to think about? What are the questions I need to ask you all to make sure I'm getting the right deal?
I like in almost any concept that I've been a part of, unless it's something that we know is gonna turn, it's just, crazy top line sales, and really is like running a small army of whatever. But if you're doing, Potbelly, you can build kind of a portfolio. So if you're doing an inline, or maybe you do something at a university setting, or whatever, a portfolio of brands, I really want to bring people in that we're already envisioning 2 and 3. Because if we have so much open space that if I put somebody in one store and they're really disenchanted, they haven't sold themselves on whether it's forever, then somebody's gonna come along and do another store that's gonna make them very unhappy later on, even if they didn't want to do it. They don't want the person there near them. But I always try to look at the deal like, let's not think one. Let's always think of this, that you're gonna someday not be ringing the register. You're not gonna be making the sandwiches. You're gonna be moving on, to create 2, 3, 5, 10. Be a candidate when we have distressed assets that we would call and say, we'd like, we want you to run them. We need you. We need you back in the game here. So, to me, that is really kind of the franchising dream of kind of creating that kind of legacy for yourself.
Yeah. Pam, do you agree?
Yes, I do. So I think, kind of in addition to what Maureen said, we have the opportunity, and we all know the term certified to expand, right?
Right.
So we're looking at them, down the road, and as franchisors to say, oh, this is a great franchisee who can expand. So we're looking, and a lot of that is, they brought their best foot forward. They're showcasing that they had the opportunity. I mean, normally, many of us look for 3 and 4 units when we're looking to sell, our SDAs, 5 units in some cases. But if you're bringing on, and there's rare cases that you have a single opportunities, but you want to have them with the goal of saying, I want to do more than one plus, and trying to matriculate from that.
Yeah, I've said for many years, there's no fun in one. You should come, I should have t-shirts, but there is, we at least want you to come in with a multi-unit mentality, meaning that, yes, we want you to work in the business, and I've read a couple of articles these past 30 days, a lot of brands are going back to that owner-operated model. But we want you to, but working on the business, and I think this goes back to maybe Ray Kroc, working on the business, not in the business. Because if you are in the back of the house or at the register all day, every day, you can't be marketing. You can't be out and shaking hands in the community and marketing your store. You get kind of tied down to the register or to the slicer or to the ovens or whatever the case may be. So I think that's very important to at least have a multi-unit mentality and then surround yourself with people. And again, typically, once you've established yourself operationally in the first location, then most brands will then want to see you grow. And again, the money's the easy part. If you've got good operations and we've all told high net worth individuals that you're not the most important person at this meeting. It's the person that's going to have the keys to the store, who's going to open the store at whatever hour, who's going to close the store at whatever hour, and who's going to motivate a workforce to care about it as much as you do. So I think, again, money's the easy part on the growth side, but you've got to have the people piece in place.
That people piece, you said something critical there, right? That part of that journey may be locking up, opening up, cleaning. But the other part, which, and talk to me about this, is, and you may have some examples of how do you help that person grow to know that, guess what? You don't have to do that. You've got to hire the team. Are there examples of folks that you've seen evolve that way? What is that process, and what do folks need to think about once they open that door and close it the first year or so in creating the team to help them succeed?
Yeah, I'm always amazed. I've been amazed over the years who some franchisees give the keys to. Like, I wouldn't give them the keys to my car, let alone this business right now. But there's countless examples. I use this. I do some lecturing at universities, and I tell the students, there was we saw it at Hallmark. It's a big deal. It's kind of like kids. Going from 0 to 1 kid, you kind of get it. But that second child, now you're outnumbered. There's 2 of them and 1 of you. So I think of it in those terms. And we've all seen that, right? One has soccer practice on this side of town, the other one has ballet on this side of town. You've got to manage that. You don't know where both of them are. And you can't be in both places at one time. So, and there was a story, I'll make it short, but a franchisee in Taco Bell, read this many years ago, and I use it all the time. He had one store, and we had this at Hallmark. We had one of our best retailers in South Jersey could not get over that hurdle of not being there every day. But the Taco Bell in California always would miss vacation with his family until one year they went to Disneyland, and he said, "I'll meet you." And they said, "No way he's meeting us. He says that every year. He's not going to make it." But that week before vacation, he prepared his team, made lists, checklists, prepared them, trained them to run the store. And he let his family go, and then he joined them like 2 days later, and he finally went and joined them at Disneyland, and he stayed with his phone. He was looking, and they never called him. And he thought the place burned down. And what he found out is they were just fine because he had them ready. He had trained them, he prepared them, he gave them lists, whatever it took, and he was able to have vacation. And then that was his springboard, like, I can do this. And I think he went up to like 27 Taco Bell. So that's a big step, honestly. 1 to 2 is bigger than 0 to 1. Like I said, just like kids. So.
Great. Yeah, Maureen, you have similar stories of what's that trigger? How do you help people like us?
Yeah, I think, you get into business and you want it to be perfect, right? You don't want to let go of anything because it's so precious what's happening and all your money's tied up in it. But I think similarly, if you need to recognize early on, and the brand needs to coach that, perfection is not the goal. It is, you're running a great operation. You need to let go. We brought you into our organization because we saw bigger things for you, right? We saw bigger things for you. I don't think the coaching stops once you signed your agreement. It shouldn't stop. you should always be, that's why we have teams that are out there looking at real estate and say, listen, I found a piece of real estate that looks like it would be a good match for your next door. I mean, so that we're constantly kind of nudging to make sure that you're not obsessing over, the drinks case or you're training other people to do that. And I think that's critically important. I think, my best franchisees, I'll say we went to California at Dunkin', and there were some times where we had far more people that wanted to go open stores in California than we had places for them to do. And in fact, we had 3,000 inquiries, 400 of them were financially qualified. It's crazy because the liquidity requirement was $5 million. And it just had such a high, but this one group that we took, a young guy, took a chance on out there, and I wouldn't say it was like super risky, but it was capitalized, but he was young, and he had the USC marching band come to his opening, and it was just like, when you talk about marketing, he was like, I'll show you marketing, and he was just all about, that, I know, it's a big brand, and we do grand openings, but he's like, but I'm gonna zhuzh it up a little bit with and he has been wildly successful, because he did have that kind of fearlessness that you find sometimes in entrepreneurs. That's the side we don't need you to paint the colors different, but we do need a little bit of that fearlessness that will help you get moving onto the next thing.
Love that fearlessness with boundaries, with guardrails, right? As you think about this, let me ask you guys and finish this sentence. If I could start my own franchise, what is the one thing that I would want to choose in a franchisee? One thing that I would want to choose, and that's my bit of advice to these folks here, what would that be?
I kind of like fearlessness, I'm not gonna lie. That was very good, well put. Like I said, you just got to, and it's hard to quantify it, honestly. You kind of know it when you see it, honestly.
Okay.
What we do know, I think these guys would agree, is especially when we take the responsibility very seriously. We're the first point of contact typically for the brand. Mm-hmm. And what we do know is it's the relationship with the brand is the best we're going to see. When we meet them, it's kind of like dating. We put our best foot forward from a brand perspective. They put hopefully their best foot forward from a candidate perspective. It's as good as the relationship is going to get. So if they're showing up with red ink all over your franchise agreement, or they're not responsive, you text them at whatever, we texted or emailed or called people morning, noon, night, Saturday, Sunday, whatever. If they're not responsive, it kind of sends, we look for those cues all the time as how they're, treating us or treating the brand during this process. And they should be evaluating us as well. I hear that all the time from peers in the industry. I applied for such and such a brand and no one contacted me, or no one contacted me for 30 days. That's a red flag in my mind. So, we get to them within 12 hours, and that's on a bad day, I will tell you. So, because you should want that and expect that from your franchisor, just like we want and expect that from our franchisees. So we know this is as good as the relationship's going to get, because again, there's going to be storm clouds. So how does the franchisor handle the stormy months or days? And how's the franchisee?
Anyone else want to add to that?
I'll just say, and I've said it before and it's come across, if they have the passion, they really have to have a passion for what they do, a love for it. And I think most people that love what they're doing, they're going to put their all.
Absolutely. Questions? I want to open it up for questions. I have one other quick question while you're thinking about your question. Let's talk about another brass tacks issue, the economy. Things go up, things go down. Is this a good time to be a franchisee? I want some honest things, because each of you in different sectors, that might say, so what's your prognosis on that? What would you say to someone who's kind of looking at the tea leaves on what's going on economically? I know really there are a lot of factors, but I'll just leave it. I'll start with you, Marie. What you think?
You know, I've been doing this for a long time, so I've seen the cycles in the economy, and, I think we could, we've talked about, there's a little bit of fatigue right now because we get so much news, and we get so much, the stock market's up, but it's not, it's not gonna trickle down to the middle class who's gonna come shop in our stores, or it's just, you're just inundated, but, in the end, I think, there is opportunity when there are rough seas, if you are ready for it, because sometimes you can buy the land, you can buy a distressed asset that somebody is just sort of like, I'm done. I don't wanna do this anymore, or something's happened in their life. So I think, the folks that are good at running their own businesses and running their own lives and show, kind of look around and say, all right, in the storms, where is there some opportunities? Where can maybe I can find that nugget that will